before he does that, I just wanted to, thank Cherie and, our whole team, Jen, everybody, they put a lot of work just to get to the draft. And that's really all we're doing is focusing on where we're at as a draft, as a district. And there's a formal process that we have to follow as far as sharing that with the public. But tweaks, adjustments, the like can all be made, and the work that went in to get to this point is pretty substantial. So I appreciate the people that were able to come in, and also respect the people that, that have other things in their lives going on as well. So without anything else from me, but I'll interject, as we need to, and I know Tracy and Nick and Eric and anybody else that works for the district will interject when we need to. But I know that these two have it locked down and they're able to go pretty well. And with that said, Dave, if you want to go through the formal process, we can do that as well. All order, all right. I hope that continues, by the way. I want that. Actually,
How's that?
okay.
All right. So basically for the beginning of the process, well, first off, so we have to approve a preliminary, or they call it proposed final budget, is the title, official title, by the end of May. So we're hoping that that will get approved at the May 24th board meeting. And then the final budget has to be approved by June 30th. So our hopes would be that at the normal June board meeting, June 28th, that we can accomplish to have our final budget passed. So to get to these numbers, we take a 5-year history, we look at that, we go department by department, we look at, reports in different various ways, we compare history plus anything that we know that is a possibility of things to come. So there's a lot of, time, a lot of effort, a lot of meetings with principals, we met with administrators, different departments, trying to go over the plans and see where we've been and what we've spent and what we project that we feel we should be spending in the future. So we're still working on staffing. Obviously, there's a lot still to come in staffing. So we've rolled all of the salaries over. Our system has a capacity. You put the information, you roll it forward, you can give it a percentage increase. So for those contracts that are not settled, that we're currently in contract negotiations with CAVA, and then we have agreements with Act 93, Security Technology, and then some other individual contracts. So those are unknown. So we rolled those forward with a 3% increase, just to start with, to see where we are. And we will, in the next 2 weeks prior to our board meeting, well, a week and a half, we will continue to look at numbers, make projections, and still look at items line by line and see if there's anywhere else we can make changes. So in the state revenues, there's a governor's proposal with a decent increase. So where I looked at was a history of increases, and we took about half of what his proposed. In looking at a history, what they sometimes propose is a larger chunk than what actually gets passed. So I put into there half of the increase of the governor's proposal for his basic ed and special ed, and in the Career Center, they're proposing some increases there too for the Career Tech subsidy. And for the federal part of revenue, well, we've done a lot of predicting as to what spending we feel that we'll have spent by the end of June of this year. And so ESSER funding has to be spent by September 30th of 2024. So in hopes of that, the majority of that spending should be in process or spent by next June 30th of 2024. Just, if there's some other expenditures that need to come a little bit after that, that's fine. But so what we did is budget the remainder of all of those funds with our projections of what's going to be spent this year. So you'll see those numbers in a minute. then, so other expenditures that have increased, we have the anticipation, but we know that the health insurance, I put that anticipated, but we know that that's going up 14%, dental and vision are going up 3%. For PESers, this is the first year since 2008, 2009 that there's actually a decrease. It's a slight decrease, but there's a decrease in PESers from 35.26 to 34%. However, I'll show you in the future, another slide where that's not going to continue to decrease. It's going to go back up. I did put a $500,000 contingency in here, that being for unknown possible increases in wages, some of the ESSER funds that, we may not have budgeted them in a line item, but we know that there are ESSER costs that are not budgeted in expenditures, and then other grants, because we're still getting, some PCCD money coming in, and there might be a possibility of another security grant, and, we're always looking for other monies that we can get in grants, so you want to have a little bit of contingency to put in the expenditure side of that money. And then I also budgeted a $500,000 transfer to capital projects, because we want to continue to grow that capital projects account for any unforeseen, projects that might happen. And then you'll see in a future slide that, so we had determined so the state changes account coding, and then sometimes we notice that there's accounts that had been added, or funding functions, objects that the state changes, and so one of the things was we always had charged the alternative ed like placements, and some of our other placements under the 1100 and 1200s, depending on where they are. That's a function, those are just numbers, but the state actually has an account or a function code for that to be separate, and it's in the 1400s. So in the later slide, you'll see our 1400 line item has gone up, but our 1100s have gone down. Same with the other thing was our cyber cost, the outside cyber placements. We used to have those come in as a subsidy deduction, and when we would record those, we put it all under just regular ed. We're paying them currently now rather than letting the state take that out of our subsidy. So we are coding them because we're looking at the bill, and Jennifer's helped out with this greatly, and actually getting it more itemized as to what students are regular ed, what students are special ed. So we're now coding those tuition costs to cyber schools differentiated between regular ed and special ed. So you'll see an increase in special ed and this other 1400 line items down the road, but I just kind of want to explain that. So, but you'll see that 1100s, our basic, our regular ed education line item has gone down. So it's not like we've increased the budget, we've just moved items around in there.
There'll be a slide later that tells the
Yep.
capital reserve fund balance at this time.
I did not put that into a slide, but I did. I did? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize, I didn't have that in here.
Yeah, you didn't anticipate it.
Okay.
Projected, I'm sorry, projected.
Okay. And then, all right, so with the totals of everything that came in after meeting with all the departments and buildings and projecting where we feel that we are going to be, revenues for 22-23, the current year, were $84,801,000, and we're looking at a budget that's going down by $2.7 million to $82,097,000. So that's a 3% decrease. And our expenditures is approximately just under 3% of an increase, going from $82.9 million to $85.4 million. So that's a $2.4 million increase in expenditures. I feel that 3% is not a bad increase in expenditures, given 14% of health benefits, increase. You're going to have salary increases. That the cost of, everything, our utilities has gone up greatly. The cost of, just buying supplies and buying stuff. So I don't think 2.9% is that big of an increase when it comes to expenditures. But unfortunately, that creates a $3.3 million deficit looking at the budget for next year. So the breakdown of revenues, this is a nice little slide that we like to show, where it shows you 67% of our revenue comes from the state. And about 8% comes from federal, which that normally is lower, but because of the COVID monies that we've gotten, that money is higher right now. Last year though, because we had ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 monies in there, it was 15%. And then your local funds are 25% of that revenue. So the correlation between what state funds is it's 68%, our salaries and benefits is 61%. So basically the state is almost, is funding our salaries and benefits. So we need a local share to pick up other costs. So I know we've had this slide in the past, so this is to show you, if we're looking at a budget or a tax increase, this would be the maximum amount that we would be able to raise taxes. So right now, our tax millage rate is 14.2481. So with the adjusted index of 5.9, the maximum we could increase taxes would be 0.8406 mils. That would increase the millage rate to 15.0887, and that would give us approximately, with a 90% collection rate, a little over $800,000. I do 90% because on average we've been typically around 90%. There's been a couple years we're under, a couple years we're over. So that's where I look at trying to get an estimate of where we would be.
Is it true to drop that?
I'm sorry.
Is it true that it's dropped that?
So this year it was at about 86, 87%, yeah, it was at 86% this year. So I'm not sure why the big decrease in this year. I mean, maybe with the rising cost of other things. We thought we would see a decrease in the COVID year in 2021, with people, being out of work, but that year, I don't know if it was the stimulus money, we had like 92% collection that year. It was kind of, a crazy, we budgeted under and that came over. I kept the budget at a 90% collection rate. I'm hoping that this year, with it being 86, hopefully that's just a fluke, and maybe next year our money will come in a little bit better, or people will be able to pay their bills. So this, I've presented this in the past as well. This shows you the effect of what, if you did a tax increase, what effect would that have on our taxpayers? Because we all know that we don't want to burden our taxpayers any more than we have to. However, we also know that we have a business to run and you have to fund it somehow. So with that, in our school district, the county has said that $60,000 is the average assessed value of a home in our school district. The increase of those taxes would be $50.44. So that would actually be like $4.20 a month. If you have a $100,000 home, that increases $84.06 for the year, which would be the equivalent of $7 per month. While I know, any burden is additional burden to taxpayers is, it can hurt the bottom line, but when it would help the school district to function, I don't think it's an unreasonable amount to ask for that to, I think you could burden that cost. I mean, to help out the school district, because eventually you're going to have to increase taxes or cut programs, because then we are not going to be able to keep funding this at what we have. So this is just a little history on the homestead farmstead. Just to let you know, so this is a property tax reduction, and this is money that comes in from the gambling revenue. So the school district receives this money and in turn gives it to those properties that are approved for homestead farmstead relief. So in 2 years ago, in 21-22, we received $1.4 million. It was $1,486,000. And that was $158 per property, that was tax relief. Last year, there was an increase to that gambling revenue, there was an increase to, a great increase, a $400,000 increase, which then, it gave additional relief to those property owners. And it's a little over 9,000 people that get that relief, and last year it was an additional $42 for everyone. This year, the state has given us roughly, it's only like $400 difference, or I'm sorry, no, it's less than that, it's like $200 difference. So the amount that everyone's going to be getting, it's a little over $1 more. So, and last year would have been a nice year if you would have increased taxes last year. It wouldn't have been that big of a hit for those people who had approved homesteads. However, that didn't happen, and so I'm asking that this didn't happen this year. But I just wanted to let you know that that homestead amount is remaining the same as what it was last year. Slight increase. And this is a 10-year average of all of Fayette County schools, what their millage rates are. So you can see that we have maintained our, and not increased our taxes since 2015-16 school year. In the pink, it shows all of the school districts, and the pink is all of the times that they've increased taxes. And if you increase the taxes by the amount of 0.8406, giving it a new millage rate of 15.0887, we still would be well under all other school districts, and that's if they don't raise taxes again. And I'm not sure, I haven't talked to other business managers as to who's proposing tax increases. I know with the IU, when they talk to business managers, a lot of them, and I didn't hear any from Fayette County on that call, but most of them, they were proposing tax increases. So this is a chart of the expenditures, similar to what I did with revenue. I did based on percentage of, the total with expenditures. So you can see that salaries and benefits makes up 61% of our budget at just over $52 million. So the purchase service, which is the next largest section, that included in that is transportation, tuition not only to outside placements, but tuition to charter schools, and then other contracted services that we have, such as IU services, counselors that we bring in, and other purchase services. Supplies and equipment makes up only 5% of our budget. And then our debt, which would be our bond payments, is just over $8 million of the total budget.
What's that percent?
8%?
8%.
I'm sorry, no, I'm sorry, percent, no, 10%. I'm sorry, 8 million, it's 10%.
Thank you.
That is hard to see. So this is also in your, what's in your slide, but it's also in your big budget book for those board members that have the big budget book. So it might be hard to see on here. It might be a little easier. It's really small on my screen. Sorry. This is the slide where I was saying that I wanted to show you the differences in some of those line items where we reclassified some different expenditures, such as the special education costs for cyber schools. So this is kind of a nice little summary of the budget based on departments or areas of education. And so it takes our budget this year, what we're proposing for next year, it gives you the percentage of change and the dollar amount of change. So for example, under 1100, which is your regular education, so that's all your regular education costs, that actually is showing going down. However, I did say that we reclassified some of those to special ed and under the 1400, which is other instructional programs. So the reason for the special ed cost of that 1.6 increase, 1.3 million of that is the special ed cost tuition for the cyber charter schools. Of course, under the regular ed budget, there is still $1.2 million for tuition for cyber charter under regular ed as well. Those outside cyber costs have continued to rise even with having our own cyber school or cyber program that we offer. So, I mean, if you look down through, there's not a lot of great variances other than, I mean, it just, the backs and forths, it adds up to a total of 2.9% increase or $2.4 million. I also then gave it by object, which is what we call so that's where it separates it out by salaries are the 100s, benefits, which would include not only just health, dental, vision, but also your PSERS costs, your social security, workers' comp, all of those costs fall under the 200s. Then your purchase professional technical services, the purchase property services, and then 500s is other purchase services, that's tuition and transportation. Then you have your supplies, your property, and then your other financing uses, which is your debt service payments.
Educate the audience on Object 400 purchase property services.
So purchase property services. Sorry. So that's rental of equipment. That's also repairs and maintenance of buildings, repairs and maintenance of equipment. We know that, you know, we need to maintain our buildings, and there are some items that, you know, we obviously need to repair. I'd like to see if we can pay for those items out of our budget, then we don't have to spend our capital reserve. So I did increase that budget a little bit for possible repairs, maintenance, that kind of thing. But this would include like all of our copier contracts, anything else we lease or rent. We have some equipment up at this Career Center that we also have a small lease up there for a few pieces.
Yep. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
That also covers your water, garbage.
Oh, I forgot about that.
sewage,
Water,
That's 300 or 400?
no, 400, I did forget about that.
Yeah, that's part of the utility.
Utilities. Thank
Part
you.
of the utilities are under 400 and part are under the 600. So
400 and 600.
water, sewage, and
Garbage.
garbage. I apologize, I did forget those. Thank you,
That's
Jennifer. Yeah, the other utilities fall under the
What's caused
600s.
the 47% increase?
I'm sorry,
You say it was 47%?
46% increase in those 400s.
Because of,
So some of it was the water sewage, because water did go up this year, and some of it was that I did increase the repairs and maintenance budget under the buildings and grounds.
Yeah.
because I think the last 2 years, 3 years, we paid all major improvements on our capital.
Exactly, so
Money
we've
back, so
not.
Three roofs, we paid cash.
Right. Right, so we've done a lot out of that bond refunding capital reserve money. However, you know, we're trying to build our regular capital reserve up. So, I mean, I could decrease that budget and we
Well,
could
no,
pay
that's
for
okay.
renovations out of,
Until
the capital
bond
reserve,
refinance,
but-
you correct me if I'm wrong, we had no capital reserve.
correct.
We had
Yeah,
zero.
we had some, but it was all spent right before, you know, we had next to nothing. We were down to like 138,000 in capital reserve. We're now up to, am I correct, Jennifer, it's 600 and some thousand?
For what?
The capital reserve fund?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, one theory is you up that by $314,000.
Mhm.
Or if you're going to need that $314,000, it's gonna come out of capital reserve. So it's you're either taking it from this hand or you're taking it from this hand. But if you budget for it, then you know it's in there, it's in the budget.
You don't have to touch the capital.
You don't have to touch
If you have a deficit, then it doesn't matter what hand, you don't have a neither
We
hand.
don't have, right.
But yeah, and if you're hit with that repair of something, where are you gonna get the money from?
You didn't have it if you're in the minus side, you didn't have to start with. It's like not every $10 in your pocket, you need $10.
But we also know the buildings, they're of age and they do need renovations and repairs. I mean, one item was the pool. I know there was some bathrooms at DT that needed some minor repairs in them. Those were some of the items that I'm trying to remember from the meetings. There was a few other ones. Well, yeah, I mean, if that would be under, parking lot would be under repairs, but that would fall under as a different line item. But I know we've talked about a parking lot at Dumber Township for additional parking, so I mean, that's gonna have to be decided down the road, what we're gonna do with that, and where that is gonna be spent out of.
I know there's a lot of talk at the CTC about that movement further on that and all.
It has, there's a logistics, I mean, it's still a logistics situation of taking kids there, supervising them there, the amount of work you're gonna get out of them, and then coming back, and the length of time that project then would take, and still having somebody to come in and finish it. So, I mean, Eric,
Why would you need somebody to come and finish?
I don't know if we have that expertise, Mr. Denzel. I mean, you're dealing with student workers, and
I've seen the sidewalks, and I don't know how they logistically did that in St. Regis. They're beautiful in different places you guys do in town. There's no reason they couldn't go over there and do that job.
Yeah, they've done enough projects in the district and in the community, and they've always finished their jobs.
That's not even a big job to do.
It's not my expertise, so we'll talk further about that. I'm sure they'll come up and talk. So I said earlier about that we have a slide about the PSERS contributions. So this is a history, just showing you back to 11, 12, the history of how PSERS has increased and that burden has come to school districts to, burden that expense of retirement system. However, it is decreasing for 23, 24 to 34%, but then as PSERS, this is the PSERS projection that it's going to continue to increase, and it will be at 38.35 come 3031. So with the revamping of PSERS, like the hope was that eventually that burden will lessen for school districts. However, when I've attended PSERS meetings, they've said it will take approximately 30 or more years to fix that to where the burden will come down. So not while I'm working here. So unfortunately, those are costs that we have to incorporate into our budget. This slide, I've had this in the past, just showing you, the mandated cost of special ed, and then the burden that puts, but we have to service the students the best that we can. We need to provide them with everything that's required, everything that we need to help them succeed. And now the big difference between this 22, 23, and 23, 24 is that variance of 1.2 million that changed to the cyber. But you can see, though, prior to that, the increases that have occurred just due to the mandates that come forth with special ed, and that's the rising cost of services for special ed services. And then this is a history of this is the outside cyber charter school costs, and those rising costs. We had a few years where we had declined, but then since COVID, those numbers just have crept back up, and this continued to increase. The hopes are that we can get some of those kids back into our cyber or back into the brick and mortar and educate them here, because that's where we'd love to see them. But this is part of the budget for next year, and we've slightly increased that budget because it just continues to increase. And this is not the prettiest picture to pose, but however, you need to have a projection of where we think we may be within the next few years. So I put the actual, audited financials for 21-22 in there. So that shows you that we had 88 million in revenue, we had 8.3 million in expenditures. That gave us an income. We had a surplus of $8 million. And I showed you this before, I think right after the audit, where just to show you, if we had not had that COVID money, we had revenues of 12.3 million and then we had expenditures of only additional expenditures that were not already paying for existing cost of only 551. So those were additional expenditures spent for COVID. We would have been to the negative 3.8 million. So thank goodness we had the COVID money. We did increase our fund balance to 19.378 million. This is just taking what we've budgeted for 22-23 and putting those numbers in there along with the COVID funding. Even if you don't look at the COVID funding, just looking at where our fund balance will be, projecting $1.8 million additional will be added again to the fund balance at the end of the 22-23, which would bring our fund balance to 21 million. Next year, which you've seen the budget, for the, what I've got worked up is a $3.3 million deficit. So that's going to decrease our fund balance to 17.8 million. Just adding, the average expenditure, revenue increases. Now, that's taking out the COVID, so, why it's still increased roughly about 1.5% in revenue, because that's around where the state, where I'm seeing that the average increases on revenue from the state. So this is not proposed, this is without any increases in taxes, this projection. And so looking at that, doing about roughly 3% increase for expenditures, by the end of 25-26, we would have exhausted all of our fund balance and have a $2.4 million negative. So at some point, we need to find more revenue. The only way that locally we can, is increasing taxes. We can, really try to get the state to talk to your legislators. You can try to get more money for education. I don't foresee, Tracy is anticipating for Title I funding, it's going to be cut a little bit for next year. So we are going to be losing those federal funds slowly. They just seem to keep cutting those programs, or cutting those lately. Or are there other items that you see we can cut? So those are where, I guess we look for guidance from you as to where you, any ideas?
No matter what you raise the taxes, you're gonna have to start cutting your expenditures.
Yeah, right, oh,
It doesn't matter
absolutely.
what you do.
Absolutely.
So cutting expenditures is another big thing in place.
So, the hope is always that you budget, and then we watch, and we try to cut, and we try to, not buy when we don't have to. And even though somebody might come to me last month and say, hey, I noticed I have $5,000 left in my supplies, can I do an order? No, if you didn't need it by now, you don't need it. Unless it's an expenditure. So when we do watch, we tell people no. So our hope is that we come in under budget when it comes to expenditures, and our hope is that our revenues come in over. However, we try to predict as close as we can. It's, obviously, you have kids moving in and out. You have a lot of, variables that you don't know. When a teacher takes a leave of absence and you have to put a sub in, plus they're actually getting paid, those are additional costs. So there's a lot of variables you don't know. Preparing a budget, it's a moving target every day.
We wouldn't have the bond refinancing, would be further in the hole than there is. When we paid
Absolutely.
$2 million a year in capital improvements for 3 years, that's $6 million we spent that would have been added to this regular budget.
Absolutely.
So instead of 3.8 million, we'd been probably 5.8.
Yeah,
6
we
million.
probably would have, in order to do the work that we did, that bond refund money, we probably would have had to do a small bond, because I don't know that we would have been able to do the repairs at Delmar Township that we did, and all the purchases that we did out of the bond refund.
Free roofs, stadium, and we did all stuff.
Yeah, you did the track, the resurfacing of the tennis courts.
CTC roof, the CT roof.
Yeah, the stadium, the taking out the bleachers, the
Yep.
removing of that paint and
2 or 3 roofs, I know 2, might have been 3.
I thought out of the bond refunding, it was You know, I think it was the
CTC,
CTC in Dunbar Township. Yes.
I mean, I applaud this board for, being receptive to the hardship that it would place on the community to raise taxes, and you've done an outstanding job as a board not doing that, while also asking your employees to look at their expenditures. I think the board has also done an outstanding job at looking at knowing and valuing their employees and not having any furloughs, but also examining every opportunity to have savings whenever you have attritional savings or reallocating staff to different positions in the buildings by not being able to hire more, but look at the existing staff that we have, knowing their strengths and being able to apply those strengths throughout the district. And I think the board has done a nice job doing that. Without having to excessively hire, especially on the professional staff level. Over the last 4 years, we've gone from roughly 321 certified staff members to roughly 306. So I think that you've done a nice job recognizing that, and I applaud the board. And those attritional savings, though, start to become less and less because you're right-sized and you're trimming every opportunity that you have while still maintaining reasonable class sizes and not curtailing any programs, as Mrs. Routson said. At some point, school districts start looking at programs throughout their academic day, co-curricular, curricular, extracurricular, and we've done a nice job to offer our students all three of those.
Joe, how come none of this has been run through the board about staffing, class sizes? I thought that all that was done prior to proposed budget.
No, right now.
No, what?
Right now, that's when we do that.
I always thought we had it prior to.
Yeah, I give you staffing updates at every board meeting. I give you, at last executive session, I gave you all the staffing numbers. I gave you the, all the elementary staffing numbers. I progressed every grade level forward. Our team did, and we said we accounted for new boundaries, we accounted for students that were being retained, and we discussed an executive session because we were talking about personnel, and we went all over all those numbers. Correct. It's right, it coincides right now with building your budget.
Sure, do we have a figure on how much outsourcing we did last year, our employees could do? Do you have a figure on that? It seems like it's every time we turn around, we're outsourcing work that our people could do, our maintenance crews could do.
Can you give us an
What kind of
example?
What,
Yeah.
Well, those drains that we repaired, that was outsourced to another company. Our guys always did those drains in the past. The ones out at Dunbar Township. There was 2 out there, I believe.
I mean,
They have new underground drains?
No, the ones that were.
Those are new underground drains. Those, they put new culverts in, and new pipes and everything. You mean our guys do that with a Bobcat?
That came from the capital projects.
But it doesn't,
Yeah,
That
that
came out of the capital
those were
projects.
paid out of capital projects, but I mean, I don't know that we had the
but
staff.
those are underground storm drains. You mean they did that before, Dave?
Yeah.
No, just to catch.
No, this was,
Underground.
no, this was the
Well, I think
whole,
I'm not sure about that.
they put all new everything.
There was, they put cameras down in and there was collapsed pipes from my understanding. and
Yeah,
they-
there's certain things that our guys are not able to do, I understand that.
Yeah, and I think, and they look at those items as, I think, on a case-by-case basis, and I mean, I know we've also had, in the past year or more, we've had a little bit of short staff in some of the maintenance, we had a lot of people on different leaves.
Doors and
We just-
windows we've outsourced also.
I'm sorry,
Putting doors and windows in, we've outsourced that, our guys can do that work. Out of the trailer out of Dunbar Township, that was outsourced. Our guys are capable of doing that.
I thought
Our
our
guys
guys
did
did
that.
those windows.
They
Our guys
built
did.
doors as well?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
I-
Windows, all that.
We
Yeah.
heard
I think
stuff
windows.
from
Now,
Fawcett.
in some of the other
The-
schools, the vestibules,
the
those
vestibule,
those were the exterior doors and those were larger
DT.
projects.
Those are drains.
Correct.
Those are drains.
Hey, Dr. Brown,
It was.
let's look at that last column over there, 25, 26. Our revenue is 79 million roughly, and our expenditures are 90 million. So what is the solution? How are you gonna make up $11 million?
My recommendation is that we do incremental tax increases.
So $11 million, you can't raise it enough.
We also have to, so my other recommendation is to seize any opportunity you have to look at the expenditure side of it. So whether, when you look at 65% of your budget is salaries and benefits.
Right, yeah.
So we have to look at our,
So we have to lay off 80 administrators, secretaries, and teachers.
we've been successful not laying off anybody for
But
the
how do you
last
make
5 years.
$11 million now? I'm talking, that's a lot of money.
Mr. Renz, I don't have the answer.
I know, there is an answer, okay? I mean, plus, we're $11 million in the hole, plus we have no fund balance. I'm not getting on you. Fund balance should be 8%, okay, of our budget. Our budget's $90 million, our fund balance should be $7 million. So we don't have $7 million, and we're $11 million, we're like $18 million in the hole. And we're sitting there talking about windows and doors. That's horseshit. Okay, I mean, we can raise up the millage this year, point 8, that gives $900,000. Next year, the year after, now that would give us a total of
2.7 million,
Yeah,
say
right.
2.9
Actually,
million if you.
I have that, so
Six
in your
times,
big book,
that
I
would
do
give us
have that.
that would give us $4.8 million. That would carry over to 25, 26, and we'd have a couple million left. Then we'll be in a hole. We have to raise it up again the next year. Didn't you say the max we raise it up is $800,000, right?
No, it's half.
That'll give you about 2.7.
So that's,
No, it's going to give us
It's only 3 years raise.
Hold it. It's going to give us 800,000 next year. Raise it the following year, you're going to get that 800,000, another 800,000. That would be 2.4 million. Raise it the third year, that would be 3 times. It's going to give you about $4.8 million. If we raise it the max over, is that correct?
Yeah, so in your big budget book that I have under
Page
the first tab, the last page in that first tab, under the first tab, it shows the financial impact of the millage increase over 5 years. So yes, so if you raise them just this year to the maximum, and then you don't raise them again, over 5 years, that accumulates to about $4 million. If you raise them incrementally, you raise every year.
I'm just going 3 years.
Yeah.
That's going to take us 3, that's going to give us 2.4 million, right?
Yep.
And that will just balance it, with nothing left over and no fund balance. I mean, we could raise it to max the next 5 years, and we might break even and have a fund balance.
Correct.
and that would deplete the entire $20 million fund, but $19 million.
I mean, we inherited $15 million in COVID 2 years ago, and we're going to regret it in a couple of years. That's horrible.
We had correct me if I'm wrong, about 2 years ago, we had around 4 to 6 million in it.
Prior to
Yeah, we got another 50, we got
Prior
another
to
15.
COVID, we were 4 to 6 million to the plus.
Yeah.
To the plus, before COVID. Yes.
We should have raised it then, because we should have at least 8% of 8 million, like 6.4. We should have raised it then, but hell with raising it now. I'm running the school board, okay? I'm not raising taxes, okay? So here's the situation we're in right now. I mean, we're going to cost people's livelihoods. We have to lay off 80 people. Don't anybody give a shit about that at all?
Yes.
I don't understand it. I'm embarrassed to say this, because this is the hole we're in right now. I've been on it for a year and a half. And it's embarrassing, we have those numbers like we have right there. It's not our fault. It goes back, previous boards, of course, that they didn't do anything. I'm not blaming all us.
We cut millions of dollars the last couple of years.
I know that, yeah.
Yeah, and we cut it. So just think with the expenditures that we cut. And took money out of capital reserve and what we cut, or you wouldn't make next year.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
You
I
wouldn't
mean,
make next year.
I do know that this board looks hard at every retirement, and like I said, we, just in that one little capsule of professional certified staff going from 321 to 306 was, saved a lot of money on the districts. We didn't rehire those 321. We've gone down in professional staff. And we haven't seen our class sizes increase. We haven't seen, anything like that.
I mean, we're on a shoestring, it's a shame. We've got $15 million, and we can't even hire, if we want to hire an aide or something like that, we can't afford it. We couldn't buy a new resting mat for the new resting room, they're raising $800,000. We can't afford to buy another mat, some mats for that room even. I'm done.
No, those are good comments, no, I appreciate the input.
Well,
This is
you
preliminary.
applaud the board, Joe. How can you applaud the board for $11 million in the hole?
Because if the board wouldn't have made those hard decisions and just said, every retirement fill.
Okay, so we're 20 million in the hole instead of 11 million in the hole. We're still in the hole.
Correct.
But that's like being 6 feet under the dirt or 3 feet under. You're still under the ground. Roxanne, don't put that in the newspaper. What makes the difference if you're 10 feet deep or you're 6 feet deep? Makes no difference.
You give me a fight, you give yourself a fighting chance at
You're a
three.
little closer.
Give yourself a fighting chance at three, and maybe not at that.
So that's, you know, our job over the next, you
Well,
know,
how many times?
month is to look at every opportunity for savings, and we will continue to look for those
Just
savings.
buy.
But I also, you know, ask that
It's all
you
the time.
consider a tax increase.
Outside placement of cyber is almost 2.5 million
I'll
alone.
say yes. The first time I was on
Outside.
board, we cut over $5 million in expenses.
That's a big chunk of money.
So, I mean, there's an opportunity.
Taxes, because they waste it.
Fix
Until
that.
you quit wasting it, then I raise my taxes.
Well, hey.
Wasting is the blow.
There are huge reasons. I know so many families who gave their kids
First
up.
thing she said to me, that.
And we have done nothing to look at that and say, what can we do different? And bring our kids back.
How's it gonna work? When are they off?
That's huge. That's 2.5 million right there. That actually is a tremendous amount. Start looking at those types of things. How do we compete? You know, and make ourselves better and bring our kids back.
So Jennifer brings up a very valid point about charter schools, in particular cyber charter schools. So, you know, our Falcon Online Learning Academy does a nice job in encouraging students that are looking for that option, that alternative to go to, you know, into ours, but we cannot require it. Also, we have no control over what the cyber school actually spends on education of the amount we have to send them. So, as I've said before, you know, I advocate contacting your state legislature to say we need to change the funding formula to something where the actual, or if your district offers a cyber program, you have to go to their cyber program, and if you want to go to an outside cyber program, that's fine, you have the right to do that, but you don't get taxpayer money for it. You're making a choice as a family to go to that. You know, I think that the formula for funding outside cybers, the 14 of them, roughly 14, that number changes a little bit because some lose their charter. The roughly 14 of them spent a collective, I think it was something like $80 million on advertisements. What was our budget for advertising last year? Zero. I don't think we put an ad out other than required by, yeah, and that's, I don't consider that an ad to come to us.
No.
That's a requirement by law. These are radio ads, TV ads, come to my cyber charter school at the, collectively across the Commonwealth, you know, they spent $80 million. I just, you know, I think that there's a target there that if we, in the next few years, as a group, come together as the 499 public schools and say, look, they can exist. There are families that find value, and we need to evolve and say, what can we offer here? If you're leaving because you know, when I worked at a cyber charter school, kids came to us that worked at the Bendenham, they were doing tryouts, or they were, you know, school phobic, you know, different reasons. Well, can we answer that in-house? What are we doing to answer that? Can we be flexible that you're going to tryouts at the Bendenham, you're going to tryouts in New York City, and you're still doing your work at midnight or 11 o'clock, you're not going to get truancy, and can we be flexible? I think FOLA is flexible at this point, we've evolved. So we still have to find ways to keep matching that, but also say to the state, please change the funding formula. It's not fair, it's not equitable. If you have $80 million to spend on advertising, that's not going into the students, that's not going into their technology, that's not going into their teaching. And if you can have less than 100% of your teachers fully certified, which we cannot, cyber charter schools can, I think that that's an unfair playing field that they can hire people that are uncertified and we can't. So I'm not talking about emergency certifications or anything like that. So I think that the more we advocate, and every time I talk to our state senator, every time I talk to our legislature, you know, to put that bug in their ear saying, look, if you want to help us, this is how you help us.
And like Joe, we also burden some cost for those students, because if they are truancy issues in those,
Don't worry about
it
those.
comes back to us, and our truancy officers have to press those charges and go after the families for those truancy costs, and then they get sometimes kicked out of
They-
those,
yeah.
and then of course they come back to us, but then they go to our FOLA, and then they also become truancy issues in there, so.
Or they're a year
it's a
behind
battle.
academically, then they come back and they're identified as special education. While they're at the cyber charter school, they're identified as special education. They come back, and that's binding, and we're not gonna argue with a child that has special needs. We're not gonna debate that, we're not gonna challenge that. We have to provide for their needs, so, they come back a year behind, and we're trying to struggle and remediate and come up with programs to help these students. And those
So
programs,
what happens in 25, 26 if we can't meet our budget? I mean, right now, we can, according to these figures here, we can. And in 26, 27, we definitely won't be able to do it with the base. So what happens to our school district?
there's a process where the state comes in and they would take over solvency, they would take over control of the school.
They were.
Yeah.
And what would they cut? They cut all sports and everything. all-
First would be extracurriculars.
Everything's gone, okay? Here we are, these guys are spending $800,000 for wrestling, and there won't be any wrestling teams because we have all sports cut.
That's fun, yeah, true.
Joe, back to the cyber charter schools.
Yes.
What is, Beth's come up with any new ideas to try and get them back, or?
As far as kids that are at cyber charter schools right now, I mean, the ones that, you know,
The ones that left
yeah.
ours to go to,
Has there been formal programs? I don't, not that I'm aware of. I mean, I know that we wanted, you know, we've done some, you know, some postcard mailings like, hey, this is what FOLA has evolved to. Please be aware, this is what we got. We've invited families to, you know, the elementary schools to say, look, this is what FOLA has evolved to. In my experience, and this is just one person's opinion that worked in a cyber charter school, once they have you, they're saying, look, you're here, you're a part of our school now. The reason your school district is sending you that postcard, or they're inviting you in, is because they want you back, and they have, you know, you're a part of our school, a part of our cyber school now, stay here, and, you know, they're offering prom. We, you know, the one I worked at had 3 graduations, 3 proms, different parts of the state. They have outings, they have, you know, trips to Kennywood, trips to, you know, every amusement park across the Commonwealth to try to incentivize the students to stay with them. Once they're there, it's hard to get back. I'm not saying it's impossible, Mr. Harshman, that's a great question. We can definitely do more. We can invite those students in and send a mailing out to every, you know, make a personal phone call to every family that's at a cyber charter school. You know, we just haven't had much luck down that route right now.
maybe we need to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And let's come up with a gimmick of whatever it takes to get them back. You know, if we even got 5 or 6 of them back.
If we default in a couple of years, we lose, we have to shut down all our programs, we're gonna lose a lot of students too, but we're gonna lose that many. They're not coming to school. Why come to school? There's nothing here. They'll be online, they'll go to PA Cyber, they'll transfer to Lower Highland, Southport, they'll go somewhere else. And if we're gonna lose that, that's extreme. We're gonna lose, I mean, if we have 4,000 kids, we might have 3,500, we'll lose 500 kids. We'll lose like maybe 10 or 15% of our enrollment. I mean, if my kid wanted to play a sport or something like that, if he's athletic or if he wanted to be in a music or a band and they like that stuff and we can't offer it, they're gonna go somewhere else. I mean, we can't afford to default, okay, and play games with that up there.
Absolutely, no, we can't afford that. I want this school here for my kids, too, so.
Yeah, I agree, you know, everyone has family, but I
So,
agree.
yeah, we need to work together and figure this out.
I didn't think last year raising taxes was gonna put a burden of $50. That's the average tax increase, that's a half a tank of gas last year. That was gonna put a burden on anyone, okay? I mean, what do you get for having the lowest in taxes in Fayette County? We're also the lowest county in the whole state. I think we're sixth from the bottom. And we're the lowest of that county. What do we get for that?
Sometimes you might not get the greatest homeowners. Unfortunately, because people will move here because of the low taxes, but.
They move in a place because of schools first.
Absolutely.
Not because of taxes.
Well, depending on the person, if they have kids or if they're an older person, but yeah, I mean, we can't compare, if we don't increase our revenue, we can't compare, and we can't function without cutting costs and increasing our revenue.
And there's so many line items that we don't have control over.
Right.
All the contracted services, transportation, we have no control over. We need transportation, contracted services for the special ed department. There's nothing that we can do that's in our IEP, we have to abide by it. Cyber school, there's nothing that we can do about it. Like,
Yeah, all we have is-
there's so, big part of expenditures is items that we have no control, like, we can't.
All we have is salaries and benefits.
Yes.
Because we have to cut administrators, we have to cut guidance counselors, teachers, secretaries, aides, I mean,
Look at that part.
cafeteria, custodian, yeah, everything gets cut.
And one good thing is maybe, hopefully this will, since this is just a preliminary, is when people retire, their salary is in there at the higher rate.
Yeah.
So when you hire for that position, their salary comes in at the lower rate. So there's a savings there. But you don't know who's gonna retire in what year or.
So with the preliminary budget, I did not put, like, the retirees that we do know about, I've not changed those salaries. I wrote everything with everyone where they are. After the preliminary budget, after the next board meeting, and then we know, and then there will be the bid meeting for all the openings, with all the retirements and with all the different openings we have. That bid process will happen. Then after that, then we go through and I reallocate all of those people to the right account numbers, to where they've moved, and then everyone that is retiring in all those open positions, I take out the high salary and I put in the low salary. So I do that for the June budget. So you will see, that is one difference you will see between the preliminary and the final, between May and June, would be those savings for those retirees. But without having that bid meeting prior to when the preliminary budget has to be, I don't know where those savings are going to be. So that will be one more accurate cost, and obviously for the June, for the final budget, we will put those savings in.
I mean, the healthcare went up, what'd you say, 14%?
14%.
That's roughly, for family health, that's roughly $3,500 an increase, okay, for NOS family health care. That's over $1 million. I mean, just in the increase right there, okay?
And there's nothing.
We could raise taxes 0.8 mil, that would give us 800,000. That wouldn't even cover the increase in health care only, not let on anything else.
With two contracts, you just said it won't come, it won't come.
Have you guys rebid any of the healthcare to other providers?
Can't
I
see.
know
So we're as
I
part of
DNC
it.
for my business. and
We're
they
as
only
part
got
of a
50%.
consortium, and we signed into an agreement with them, so it's with Allegheny Health Action, Allegheny County Health.
Yeah, part of the Allegheny Intermediate Unit, and then
So they,
because they have so much bulk buying, bulk purchasing in healthcare, we found that even when we were part of the IE1 consortium, the rates were better at the Allegheny consortium because they were bigger, had more numbers and more members, and they could get lower rates, even though they're 40%, they got lower rates. So we did evaluate that, and it's an ongoing evaluation, but right now, because of the bulk, really there's no better opportunity for us at this point.
Is that buying?
And we haven't looked at any
Yeah,
of the
buying.
side of consortium, because I think there's some competition between, like, UPMC and Blue Cross Blue Shield, that, like I said, my business, ours went at 3.3%. That's a lot less
Well, better
than
than 14,
14%. Right, Right, and we have their top.
Yeah, and we did have a large savings when we switched from IU1 to the Action, healthcare, but that was 5 years ago. And we've had smaller increases. This is the largest and
Or maybe
most
that was
impactful.
last year, you knew you were getting it this year, because last year was almost
Yeah.
nothing.
Right, last year it was low. So, unfortunately, and so hopefully this is not a trend that they're gonna continue to have such large increases. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, that is something that we evaluate and we will look at, but we had a buy-in to that, which we're still paying in to buy into to be part of that consortium, to have those savings, because they do, all that work for us, and they.
I don't think there's any school district by themselves.
I don't know that there is any school district that negotiates that on there.
What was the increase in healthcare last year? What was the percent? 7%?
7%.
Okay, so the average, so the family healthcare is $24,000 roughly this year. Yeah, take my
Something
word for
like
it.
that, yeah.
It's 24,000
Yeah.
for family
Just
healthcare.
trying to,
It went up 14%, so it's gonna be like 27 something.
right now.
I mean, even if you raise it up 8% next year, 8% of $27,000 is a hell of a lot more than the 14% of what we're paying now. So even though it's a lower percentage, the dollar amount's gonna go up even greater, because you're taking percentage of a larger amount of money. And we're negotiating right now for teacher contracts, right?
Correct.
The percentage that they pay.
Yes, we are. That is something we always look at there is, the percentage the employee burdens on that as well.
Wonder if there'd be any temperature of offering an early retirement to some of these teachers. If you had some that was close to retiring, we know that
Well,
number?
we've looked at that list and actually, we looked through that list and there was not, the ones that we felt would qualify or are at that level have given us retirement letters. I think there was only one or two that, on the list that did not. And we have several that we've heard that are retiring next year.
already going to retire anyhow.
So we already have
2 years. instead of
13
2 years. I mean, somebody was saying about
retirements?
8 years or something, 2 years.
I believe it's 13 retirements that we've received, and that's without an incentive. So I mean, I think at this point.
There's an incentive in, there's
Well, I mean,
an additional
Part of
incentive.
an additional incentive, because they do have an incentive in their contract already by getting the health insurance, post-retirement health insurance, and they get paid out for their sick
The
days. So that's,
incentive is just retire, that's incentive enough. okay?
I'll
I mean,
retire. Now, you have to come
I
with us,
didn't get
right?
incentive to retire, I just signed it
Right,
up.
right. So I mean, and a lot of times we do see at the end of a contract year, a larger sum, and we've had 13 this year with the end of their contract. So I mean, I don't know if that's the reason or if it's the timing.
We have 13 teachers retired.
13,
I don't know if the teachers are all employees, across all staffs.
maybe it was
Oh,
13
okay,
total.
not on teachers.
I'm not sure of that number, I don't.
I apologize, Amy has that in her book, but I know I heard 13 and that might be of all staff. Yeah, that 13 of all staff. But yeah, when we looked at the list of who could retire, I feel like,
We did it 2 or 3 years.
I don't think that you
ago.
would get that many more. And yeah, you have a few that have stated that their plan is to retire next year, so I mean, I don't think if you gave them, I think their situation, if they could retire, they probably would. It's probably a situation where they need that one more year in order to reach either the years of service or an age.
Where they'll run their sick days until for a year, then retire.
Anything else?
I know we didn't really stop and pause formally for public comment, but any other public comments? Anything for the good of the order? President Panzella? Thank everybody for coming in. And as board members, at least think of questions. If they want to email us, we'd be very appreciative. When you jump into the big book and you go into the weeds and see things, please reach out to us. We appreciate it.
So the big book has your detail, that for the board members that received that has more of the detail report, so if you wanted to look at more detail, it's fine reading, there you go. It has a list of every account number in there, so if there's something you want to know, if there's something if you have a question about a certain department, if you can't understand or know where to look for it, just give me a call. You can contact myself, you can contact Jen in my office. Vicki might be able to help you, because she understands all the accounting codes, and so she pays the bills. So, any of you can contact any one of us, we'll try to answer questions. But between now and the next board meeting, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay?
Is that 85 million for the
Let me check this.
or is that a preliminary?
Hold on one second.
If your first one is that you put-
So part of this reference, so that helped us to get to the positive.
But now,
This is the preliminary. So that's the preliminary. Exactly. And then, well, it's doing the realignment, that is helping the numbers, because it's helping alleviate that over. Yeah. I think he understands.
Yeah, probably about 58.
We're trying to say that we It's not.
You mean this current year or last year?
That's the 1.17.
Yeah, that's going to be, that's correct.
I just sent you a text.
This is in the trailer So one of those things that was just recently is that the Scott had talked to me and he said, I don't want to turn out how, he said about fixing and he said, did you send it out of capital reserve? And I said,
For, I think, for, there is,
this is the budget for all. I only put the budget in one account because we don't know where we're going to spend it. I put the budget in one account
all of those add up to this, add all those together. And then I added about I added 60 grand for that shit. Oh, we did, cyber, not bringing kids back.
That's, I can't remember we brought almost $2 million.
There's a slide that shows it. 16, 17, 18. Oh, yeah, it did decrease 2 years ago, yes. Yeah, I hate to say it, but I'd say at least half the kids that are out there in cyber, and it's not all of them, because there, in some kids, it is a great program for them, and that's fine. But for it's because the parents are sick of paying insurance, because they can't get their kids out of bed to come to school, so they put them in cyber school. And then they jump from one cyber school to another cyber school.
We're never going back to that. They don't care. They don't care.
So, like, when my kids went to, back when they were preschool, a few years back, before we had our own cyber, one of the aides that worked in his preschool, she was,
I couldn't find, I found it back to.
her son, so she went to cyber school. She did all his work, so he graduated and her yeah, I'm like, what does that teach him in life? What does that teach him?
And the other problem is,
That was son's child. They were 34. What they talking about? So then,
no,
they didn't, I couldn't find
Yeah.
that. Then,